As you might be able to tell, I'm still in the midst of putting this together. Got a couple of pieces left. But I figured I'd do a two-part series on putting this thing together. First part's just going to be the bed, and should see a lot of time lapses in that because it was pretty easy to put together. Second part is going to be the saw head and getting that on the carriage. So obviously that part will come out a little bit later because I still have a little bit of work to do. But I should be able to get the first part out for you since that part's all done and ready to go. So sit back and enjoy. So a couple weeks ago I got a Frontier Sawmill delivered. So it's an OS23 and now I get to put it together. So I've already started laying down some bricks to put the rails on. These will obviously get changed out with either 4x4s or railroad ties, something a little bit beefier before I put the saw head on, because that saw head is a couple 100 pounds. So I'm gonna need some help doing that, but hopefully we can get this thing together and start cutting some wood. So the first step in the instructions is to lay those 4 big rails out. Those are each 7 foot long. I know they're not straight yet, but we'll take care of that in a minute when we start putting the bunks in. Because the first step is making sure they're getting tight. Putting all those bolts in, making sure you're getting your rails straight. So I'll go ahead and do that. And we'll see what this turns out like. Okay guys, this is a time lapse of me pulling the bunks out and getting them all lined up where I want them to be. You'll notice I put down all 5 bunks, not really caring which direction they go. I do come back and fix that later, make sure all the holes are on the same side as per the instructions. So I got my tracks all laid out, my bunks all laid out. I'm gonna make sure these holes are all on the same side. I got all those on the same side. And the locking mechanism for the saw head ends up in that corner, which is right where I want it because I want it next to my garage. So I got it all set up the way I want to. And I got my bag of hardware right here to put all this together. So here I am connecting all the rails and bunks together. I start with the easiest one for me, which would be in the middle, and then I attach the other end and try and get 2 on one side and 2 on the other before putting that last one in the middle. That one in the middle is going to be extremely hard because you have to line up both rails as well as that underplate and the bunk in the middle. So you'll see in a minute how I end up doing that, but just sit back and enjoy. So what I've been doing on all these is just getting them loose in there and then tighten them up with that guy. It's a 15mm socket there. And then they'll end up looking like this. They're still a little loose, but that's because I got that big guy in the middle I need to put on with those brackets underneath. So that'll be the next part. So as you can see, I'm doing the middle plate now. I did the lower side, this side here, and then I moved to the upper side, tightened them down a little bit more, and I left the middle so that I can line up all those holes and put some bolts in there. And I've already got the other side done. So let's make them look the same. So we've got the first step all done. All those bolts are in relatively tight. I'll come back with a torque wrench later and make sure that they're all torqued to spec. Next step, we put the side rails on, and those will make it yellow. And then we put that lock on for that saw head, which again should go right next to the garage. Alright guys, I'm back out here the next day. It rained overnight, so you'll see a little bit of water on the tracks, but I'll get that cleaned up before I'm moving anything. Next step is to attach these yellow side pieces here. They go right along here. And then after that, or included in that, we'll put these on the inside. After that, we'll put those on the ends. And this is that lock. It's going to go right there in that corner. So that'll keep the saw head from moving. And over here's my hardware that I'm going to be using. I got the Frontier 12 for the tracks. Now in the instructions, here's the step that we're doing. This 327 and this 330 are in there, and there's enough of them for all these holes, as well as the next step, 327, 330, and there's that attachment for the ends. However, that 5, I can't find that anywhere. Looks like it might be a little bit smaller than those 327s, but I don't see them anywhere. It's supposed to have 4 of them. It's supposed to have one on this side of bunk 2 and one on this side of bunk 4. And it's mirrored. All 4 of those bolts are number 5s. And I can't find them anywhere, so I'm going to see if the 327s work for me. And I'll let you guys know. Now that I'm attaching the side rails, I have a choice to make. They are longer on one side of the holes than they are on the other. I decided to put the longer side down as to not interfere with the rollers. I don't know that it really matters much. It doesn't look like they're long enough to interfere with the rollers if they are on the high side. They do provide a little bit better coverage of that silver on the side rail. If they are above, that thicker part is above the bolts. However, I just found it easier to mount it below and not take the chance. So I just got finished installing the side rails there. I still got one more to go, but I was checking on these. And if you look really close there, those bolts only go through these end plates. They don't actually go through the frame. So I'm sure that's a mistake. And I will be putting those on the inside, so it will go through those holes first, and then through this, and then I'll attach the nut. But yeah, that definitely should connect to something. So we're gonna go ahead and put those on the inside. Here I am attaching that locking mechanism on the far side, and then the close shots of me is actually putting the end rails on. I did end up taking those back off to get the saw head on, which I discussed a couple of times. But I would suggest putting the locking mechanism and the one side on, and then whether or not you use a forklift to load on your sawmill or you just put it on the end rails, as the instructions have an alternative solution for, then you can put it on either way and attach those other end rails at that time. But at least then you're locking your saw head in the middle. Back at the garage, you'll see. So, just like I told you guys, went through the outside, through that middle piece, and then through this end piece with the nut on the inside. Obviously the instructions have it wrong. The reason I was checking it out is I actually installed those bolts without this end piece and had to take them back out. So, got all 4 of them in now, and now I can tighten all those up, along with those end pieces. Because these are still a little bit loose. One thing you'll want to note when you're putting this together is first step bolts fit in a 15. This doesn't. It's because it actually fits in a 5/8. Fits in there nice and snug. The nut does fit in a 15. So if you're having trouble getting those together, you need both. So I've got all those bolts tight now, 15 and the 5/8 together to tighten those up. Now I'm going to work on the legs. So you got 10 of those. Next step is the legs, and it's really just a nut and a washer, and then making sure the thing is level. So I'll go ahead and add the legs, and then hopefully move it to some 4x4s before it gets too far along, too heavy for me. Here I am attaching the feet. This is a little bit difficult. You can see me picking up the rails, trying to slide those feet under there. I didn't really have enough ground clearance. They come up about 6 inches off the ground, and I've only got about 5 inches underneath. So I did have to pick up each section of rail to try and get those feet on, as well as probably straining my back a little bit more than I should have. So I suggest you build this up pretty high off the ground, make sure it's supported well enough, and then put those on. Another note is just to avoid this step if you have the trailer package, because you will need the feet out of the trailer package, and the instructions go over how to install those, or that you need to avoid installing these in order to install those. So, just a note if you have the trailer package. So as you guys have seen, I got 9 of those legs in. I'm kind of struggling a bit because those 2 bricks I have are enough to get the frame off the ground, but I can't get the leg underneath. So if you're putting one of these together, get it up off the ground. I can stick my whole hand under here just fine. I'm not even touching the beam. But that's still not enough to get these monster legs underneath that beam. So I'd suggest doubling up 4x4s or something to get under there. Give yourself enough room. So here I've been going through with drawings like this, just showing the illustration. And yeah, it turns out there's a whole nother section with words and everything. And you can see right there, where is it? Install the carriage travel end stops and the carriage arrest latch assembly to the inner side of the tracks, which is what I did. And the picture shows it on the outside. So I don't know if they need to update their picture, update their wording, but yeah, those don't agree. And also your rear carriage travel end stops will be installed after the carriage has been installed. So guess I need to take mine back off because they're not supposed to be on there yet. So just a tip for you. So a few things have happened. Went to my local hardware store, got some 2x4x8s. Those are underneath, running the entire length of the sawmill. Got a couple of them 8 foot long, so you'll see there's a gap just past that 3rd bunk. And I left all the extra at the head of the saw. Hopefully that keeps it out of the way. Then I got some 4x4x8s underneath that I cut down to 4 foot long. I got one of those under each of these sets of legs. And I got a 15/16 so that I can adjust that guy. And hopefully those nuts are the same. So now I get to level it, and then I'll end up taking these bad boys off. Because like I said, those are not supposed to be on there yet until that big saw head gets put on. So looking at the directions here, we got the log rest bars coming in. We're going to go ahead and put those on the 2nd bunk and the 4th bunk. And I picked up that piece of aluminum square just to help level out the bed. So it's a 4 foot piece of aluminum square. And I picked that up when I got the wood. So install those log rests, make sure they're 90 degrees, and then tighten them down so they don't move. So I got those log dogs installed. I got one on the 2nd bunk, got one down on the 4th bunk, and I finally pulled those end rails off. So I'll be ready to install the saw head here in the next couple of steps. So as you can see, I got the posts put in the 2nd, the 4th bunks. Getting ready to assemble a log dog. So you're going to want to grab this long pole all the way across out of the box. Grab this guy. This screw is already in here, although it lists it as a separate part later. You can see both those come together. Here's what it'll be connecting to. And calls the bag number 6 log dog. So it should be really easy to find. And that's all 3 of these steps. We're going to slide that in onto the bar, bolt the bar down, and then attach this long. You'll see me go back and forth here a couple of times on which way to install this, as well as which way it swings, and taking that pole on and off a couple of times. I do think the instructions could use a bit of clearing up. However, if you just look at the log dog and take a moment to assess where you want to put it and how you want it to swing, I think you can get it done in one shot. Once I sat back and I decided where I wanted it to swing and how I wanted it to look, I put it on and I just didn't look back. So just a note there, just take your time, take a minute, figure out how you want it to work, and do it once. So as you probably saw in that clip, I had a little bit of trouble getting this log dog in the correct position. Forgot it the first time, added it the wrong way the second time, had to turn this bar around. Instructions are a bit unclear, because when I'm looking at it this way, I don't see the holes there, I don't see the posts there, so I think that should go the other way. Then when I installed it, looked like it should go the other way, but I just think the instructions are a bit unclear. So I have mine installed like this. If you have this part flipped the other direction, I don't think it'll matter much. You just might get a little bit of a different swing when you put that log dog in. So, just a tip to watch out for. Wasn't that hard to install. This picture kind of got a little wet, but that's basically how I have mine installed. If you flip it around the other way, you can see that post in the bottom right hand corner. Matches my post. I'll go ahead and flip around the saw for you so that it's the same orientation, but I have my post there, and then I have the bar on there, then I have this actually going the wrong direction. That last post should be going the other way, but we'll see how it works. Maybe I'll end up turning that thing around. So as you can see, I got that log dog installed. Had a few trouble installations with it. Had the log dog pointed this way a couple of times, had that middle piece flipped around a couple of times, but I think overall I want a post there, I want a post there, and I want pressure as close to the middle of the log as I can. So I decided to change it up and install it this way. Don't know that it's the exact way the instructions are telling you to do it, but they seem a bit unclear to me, so I'm going to go ahead and install it like this. I've got this on the bottom so that I don't saw into it. There's really no way to get this on the bottom, so going to go ahead. It's well below the bunks. If I come across the top of the bunks, I'm not going to cut into that guy. He disappears well before I get level. So I think that's the best installation for what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's just a picture of that string. Put that string across, put that nut down, and the nut is just there for spacing. It is not intended to support that string or change the direction of that string. It's just meant to provide spacing. And then use whatever you can to shim that up. And there's your nut in the middle, right in the middle of that picture. And then tightening up all of those bolts, all 12 of them. Outside the rail, underneath the rail. Make sure those are all tight. So the next step in the instructions is to align the tracks and tighten all those bolts down. You're going to need some string, and you're going to need to install those end pieces that I had installed that I took off that now I have to install again in order to get this thing clamped up and level. But basically you want to run them from that corner all the way across to that corner, and then put a nut on the track right here between your string, which is running from this, across the top of the nut. Have a nut in the middle, have a nut at that end. Make sure it's all spaced appropriately. You don't want it resting on the nut or changing, deflecting, using the net as deflection to change where the string is going. You just want it to lightly rest on all three of those nuts, and then tighten all these bolts down. Make sure to get those guys in the middle. Those are very important, because that's going to make sure that when your saw head goes across that middle section, that your saw doesn't change direction, give you a nice little cup in your board right before you are even done sawing. So make sure your boards come out straight. Make sure that those 4 bolts on the outside rail and those 8 bolts, remember you got 2 on this side, 4 going through the bunk, and 2 on that side. Really tighten those down. And the same thing over here. You're going to be running that string. Make sure all 12 of those bolts are tight. Remember, that middle one is for your foot. So we're going to level out shortly, but not right now. So as you can see, I got that string. Start over in that far corner. Run along the far bunk. It runs through that hole, over to this hole, and back. And then I have nuts to make sure the spacing is correct when it's tight. And I've got the same thing on the other side. So now I get to go ahead and tighten up all these bolts. So we should be good. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a like. And if you want to see the second part, or me using the saw, go ahead and subscribe, because I'll have more videos coming out just like this. Thanks.